the story of a man searching for the meaning of life, looking for a light in the dark corridors of existence. Here is Albert Camus. Albert Camus is one of the most influential philosophers of the 20th century. His thoughts and works reflect a worldview full of irony and absurdity, while dealing deeply with the existential pains of human beings. Camus' works have left deep traces in the world of literature and philosophy. Camus is known for his novels such as The Stranger and The Plague. In addition, his work The Myth of Sisyphus expresses absurdism and reveals his existential philosophy. Camus' philosophy is based on the courage to rebel despite the meaninglessness of life and the effort to make sense of life. Camus' philosophical views emphasize human values and freedom. According to him, moments of happiness and human value can be found even in meaninglessness. At the same time, the struggle for justice and freedom are themes that are frequently addressed in Camus' works. Albert Camus' The Stranger is one of the most important works of 20th century literature and also one of the works that most clearly reflects the author's existential and absurd philosophy. While this novel deals in depth with the meaninglessness, loneliness, and inner conflicts of human beings, it also reveals the existential pains of modern man by skillfully using absurdity and irony. The main character of the novel is an ordinary man named Meursault. Meursault is insensitive to life, emotionally cold and routine. One day, he accidentally kills a man and conveys to the reader the internal and external conflicts he experiences after this event. Meursault's insensitivity to the event and his attitude after committing the crime reflect his absurd view of life. At the beginning of the novel, the death of Meursault's mother and his insensitivity towards this death draws attention. The cold attitude in the funeral scene that follows the incident clearly reveals Meursault's insensitivity towards life and death. Meursault is portrayed as an ordinary man who avoids expressing his feelings and is indifferent to events. The main plot of the novel centers on Meursault's affair with a woman he meets on the beach one day and the tragic consequences of this affair. Meursault's insensitivity during this affair and his indifference towards the consequences of the affair reflect the main characteristics of his character. Instead of reacting emotionally to events, Meursault acts with mediocrity and insensitivity. In the later parts of the novel, Meursault's confrontation with the manslaughter and the judicial process of this incident constitute the basic fiction of the work. It is possible to see the meaninglessness of Meursault's environment and his inner conflicts as the reason for committing the crime. His absurd way of thinking causes him to question the meaning of life and experience an inner conflict even after committing the crime. An important theme in Camus' The Stranger is the freedom and responsibility of man. The judicial process that begins with Meursault's crime deals with the free will of man and the consequences of his choices. Meursault's behavior during his trial examines the concepts of freedom and responsibility in depth. Absurdist philosophy is also frequently encountered in the work. The events Meursault experiences and the attitudes he shows emphasize the existential pains and meaninglessness of human beings. Especially at the end of the novel, Meursault's oscillation between acceptance and rebellion is one of the main characteristics of absurdist philosophy. Another striking point in The Stranger is the simplicity of language and expression. Camus conveys Meursault's inner world and conflicts to the reader by using a simple and plain language. This simplicity deepens the layers of meaning of the novel and allows the reader to better understand the emotional complexity of the character. In conclusion, Albert Camus' The Stranger is a masterpiece that skillfully deals with man's existential dilemmas, meaninglessness, and inner conflicts. Meursault's insensitivity, combined with the themes of absurdity and freedom, deeply examines the existential pains of modern man. Camus' simple and impressive narration draws the reader into the work and makes them think, while at the same time offering a literary pleasure. Albert Camus' philosophy is fundamentally based on the absurd and existential. His thoughts begin with man's attempt to make sense of life. Accepting that life itself is meaningless, Camus emphasizes the human effort to find the joy of living despite this meaninglessness. What really is the meaning of life? What should one do in the face of existential dilemmas? Camus' answers to these questions form the basis of his philosophical thoughts. Camus' philosophy of the absurd is about accepting the meaninglessness that human beings face and yet striving to make sense of life. According to him, the meaninglessness of the universe can suffocate man and create a dead end. However, even in this situation, man must preserve his joy of living and his freedom. When questioning his philosophy, we can consider the following questions. Do we find the meaning of life only by making sense of it? Does the effort to create one's own meaning in the face of meaninglessness really bring inner satisfaction and happiness? Camus' philosophy also focuses on the concepts of rebellion and freedom. According to him, man's effort to make sense of life brings with it an inner rebellion. Rebellion means standing up against the meaninglessness of life and protecting freedom. At this point, we can also consider the following questions. Does rebellion really increase one's inner peace and happiness? Is rebellion against meaninglessness a solution, or does it lead to an even deeper impasse? Camus' philosophy also touches upon the concepts of justice and solidarity. According to him, the human stance against meaninglessness strengthens the feelings of justice and solidarity. However, at this point, it is possible to ask the following question. Does solidarity and a sense of justice in the face of meaninglessness increase one's inner peace and happiness, or does it create new conflicts and problems? By questioning all these questions, Camus' philosophy deals in depth with human existential dilemmas and meaninglessness. Understanding and evaluating his thoughts can also help us to review our own life and philosophical thoughts. Albert Camus' The Plague is a masterpiece that deals in depth with human existential problems, moral values, and social responsibilities. This novel examines the social collapse that occurs in an Algerian city called Oran due to the spread of an epidemic disease called plague and how people react to this situation, while also focusing on the search for existential meaning. The main theme of the novel is the spread of the plague in the city and its effects on people's lives. As the city of Oran is virtually destroyed by this epidemic, people are forced to confront their own inner conflicts. In this context, it is seen that the plague, beyond being a physical disease, symbolizes the spiritual and moral collapse of people. One of the characters at the center of the novel is Dr. Roos. While Dr. Roos fights against the plague, he also has to fight against the emotional and moral collapse of people. His courage, self-sacrifice, and love for people reinforces the central message of the novel. While witnessing the suffering of the people, Roos also emphasizes human values and solidarity. Another important character of the novel is Tarou. Tarou is a character who observes how people react as the plague spreads through the city. His observations and thoughts delve deep into the inner conflicts and social responsibilities that people experience. Tarou argues that people should not remain insensitive to their suffering and fight for social justice. In the parts of the novel where the plague takes its toll, it is clearly shown how people react differently and how they sometimes act out of fear and selfishness. However, in the process, many characters undergo internal changes and move towards rediscovering human values. This is one of the main messages of the novel. No matter how people react to suffering, the important thing is to remain true to human values and solidarity. Existential and absurdist philosophy also plays an important role in Albert Camus' The Plague. The Plague deeply reflects the meaninglessness and suffering that people face. While the novel questions the existential dilemmas and meaninglessness of human beings, it also makes us think about human freedom and responsibility. Camus' The Plague offers an in-depth analysis of human existential pains and social responsibilities. The novel's characters and the events they experience reveal the inner world of man and social dynamics in an impressive way. This is one of the elements that make the work important in literary and philosophical terms. While reflecting on Albert Camus' philosophy, we deeply question the existential dilemmas of man, meaninglessness, and rebellion. These reflections can help us understand our own lives and the world more deeply. However, the important thing is not just to think, but to put these thoughts into action and reflect on our lives. Perhaps the most important thing is to remember that we are all on a journey in the search for the meaning of life. In the search for meaning, human beings sometimes run into dead ends and wander through the dark corridors of meaninglessness. However, as Camus emphasizes, the way out of these dead ends is to preserve freedom through an inner rebellion and not to lose the joy of living. In conclusion, Albert Camus' philosophy reminds us that we must constantly question and protect our freedom with an inner rebellion in an effort to find the meaning of life. Human endurance and the joy of living, even in the face of meaninglessness, are in fact our greatest values. That is why we must always continue to rebel and defend our freedom.